Awesome. All right. Welcome back to Creative Mornings. How many of you have been to this event here before? And how many of you? Okay. So most of you. Nice. So Creative Mornings is the world's largest face-to-face creative meetup. Some of you might have been to it in other cities. We were in Dubai for about 8 years and then took a break. And I'm the new host in Dubai. This is our second edition since we're back. And basically, this month's theme is revival. And revival is a really, really interesting topic because there are so many ways you can go about it. But what Nana and I decided to focus on was the importance of reviving tradition. Now, the world is moving at a really fast pace. And in that pace, we've lost a lot to convenience and ease. And I think reviving tradition is important because it helps ground us in what is actually important. So imagine food, right? Like, look at what the ingredients in fast food are. That's what's being consumed at a mass level, but that's not necessarily good, right? Look at fast fashion and the damage it's doing to our environment, and that's not good. So reviving traditions is super important because it allows us to actually care about our planet and care about the people within. So I'd like to thank our global sponsor, Adobe. I'm sure everyone has used it, and they empower creatives all around the world with their tools. And they have this awesome initiative for creatives around the world where it's called Level Up. So you can basically, they have a series of workshops that you can join, and I will be sending that link out through an email later on. And I'd like to thank our local sponsor, C2. They're an awesome agency out here in Dubai, and they really have supported this from the beginning. And I want to introduce Nana, our amazing speaker. So Nana has started, yes, exactly. Woo! Nana has started 3 incredible startups in Dubai, and actually worldwide now. And all 3 of her startups have tradition at the heart and center of it. And she will tell you the importance of why she's done that. So over to you, Nana. Thank you for being a part of this.
Is my mic on?
That's you.
Okay. My name is Nanaso Mancell, to give you the full thing. And first of all, when I talk about traditions, I want to be clear that I'm not talking about a very dangerous thing that I've seen going round about trad wives. And this very unrealistic thing that I'm not sure ever happened. So I'm a mum of 3 myself. I'm sure you want to have traditions with your kids and your families. But I'm not talking about just going back to the past just because for some reason we see it as some kind of golden age. I'm more talking about what was useful that has gone before that we can use now. And also, as an African person, it took me a very long time to accept that I was black and African, because I was born and brought up in Ghana, where it wasn't, how can I say, being black wasn't a thing, because we were all black. And then when I started to understand my culture, a lot of the conversation around our identity was having a conversation with colonialism and the slave trade and that sort of thing. And a lot of kind of African art is in that space, which interests me to some extent. Of course, I'm a very political person, but I'm a lot more fascinated by what's going on now, which you can broadly term as Afrofuturism. I don't know if you know that term. But it basically means, for those of us that are kind of African and interested in our development, we go back to our conversations about art, design, culture, but picking up from before colonialism and the slave trade. So that the conversations aren't just about the struggle, but going back to what was authentically there and bringing it forward. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, very much what I'm about. So this is me. Am I blocking me? So I lived in Dubai for 20 years. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I've only left because my 3 boys, who are half Irish, are now in school in Ireland. I somehow never thought I'd be that kind of mummy who would follow older kids about, but here I am. And so I'm living between Ireland and passing through Dubai and going to Ghana a lot. And I'll talk to you about my project in Ghana that I'm working on. I spent most of my, I studied law, realized I'd made a mistake, but still graduated so my parents wouldn't hate me. And then spent most of my career working in PR and advertising, and kind of a little bit not really liking myself for doing that. But as you know, when people say to you, the universe has its way, sometimes it's true. Because then whenever I did become an entrepreneur, the one skill that I really needed that I wouldn't have afforded to buy was my marketing and comms and PR skills. And so, where am I? Yeah, so I would be, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my family because it's kind of important to my story. So I was sent age 10 to live to go to boarding school in England, and I was fine with that. I would never have enough coins to be able to call home. And then I did my degree in the UK as well. And whilst I was studying my degree, I realized that I didn't really understand my Ghanaianness, and I didn't know how to express it. And in those days, none of us that was, say, let me say, a cool or middle class kid, you would not wear African fabric. You just wouldn't. It was just seen as something your grandma or we just didn't do it. We didn't value it. We didn't understand it. There was no Afro beats. We all straightened our hair. And this is not going back that long. So kind of my journey into my own identity started with food. So in university, then I started finding out how to cook Ghanaian food. But you know the thing, they say, do what you love. I just kind of looked down on it and never thought I should take it seriously until then the COVID hit. And I had quite a few friends that were becoming vegetarian or vegan. I'm vegan myself now, but I started off thinking, that's just something for, skinny white girls that do yoga, nothing to do with me. And very cynically started Vegana, my food business, as a marketing USP, that it would be plant-based West African food rather than anything I believe in. I'll come back to that later. But like anything else, once you open your mind to it, and now I'm a, firm cult card-carrying vegan and loving my life for it. This is my great-great-grandfather, called Kobnasechi. And he was a lawyer and a philosopher and a writer. And I think this book is published in 1915, and I think he's still what we know is the first published African playwright. But Kobnasechi was all about finding African solutions for African problems, and understood that the way to our independence wasn't either by becoming mimicking our colonial masters or being too strong in our identity. We had to kind of find this middle way. So I'm very much a product of generations and generations of that. So as I was doing that, I idly kind of put his name in, put Kobnasechi in Google, and I found, wow, there are people still making, so that's my claim to fame. My great-grandfather is on TikTok. So so I thought I'll show you the film. Here we go.
This man is the Ghanaian lawyer who vowed never to wear suit and tie in court, and he kept his promise. He is popularly known as Kobnasechi.
the Gold Coast, the British Crown colony in West Africa, and became the independent nation of Ghana. He devoted his life to working for his country's freedom, and he died in 1956 at the age of 63, just 1 year before Ghana became independent.
Is it just this iPad?
Setchi came from the Bantu people, from a wealthy family in the port of Cape Coast. He wanted him to become a lawyer. Qualified as a barrister, court lawyer, Setchi went to study in London during the First World War, and he was called to the bar from the Inner Temple in 1918. This was his second time in Britain. He had already lived there between 1910 and 1914, studying English literature, before changing to philosophy and later gaining an MA from University College London. And he returned to Ghana, Setchi embarked on a long and successful career in law. At the same time, he became a key figure in the struggle for Ghanaian independence. He challenged perceptions of African colonial identity, and he was famous for going to court dressed in Ghanaian country rather than a European suit and tie. Setchi's influence also spread internationally through his writing, which championed and probed a wide range of subjects from politics and the law to civil rights and the struggle for independence. Entertained and sometimes scandalized Ghanaians with his satirical commentaries on society that were regularly published in the press. He also wrote a satirical play, The Blinkers, a comedy that wickedly lampoons Ghana's upper-class society and their aspiration to live in the European life. The Blinkers is now regarded as one of the most important plays in modern African theatre, with scenes and characters straight out of a soap opera. The play takes a vitally comic look at how the influence of Western culture undermines African societies through colonialism, racism, and assimilation. A recurrent theme of the Blinkers is the damaging effect of the class system on people, which Setchi has witnessed firsthand when he lived in New York. Setchi was a major figure in the Pan-African movement, which started at the beginning of the 20th century and brought together leaders, politicians, and activists from Africa, Europe, the Caribbean, and America. He campaigned against colonial rule and imperialism. They worked to spread awareness of the African diaspora and to create the cultural and economic unification of Africans and the African diaspora across the world. The first Pan-African conference was held in 1900 at London Westminster Palace. The effects of the legacy of the Venus lectures, many achievements are still honoured in Ghana and West Africa, especially for his conviction that nationalism can and should be a peaceful path, and that embracing African cultural identity is a key part of achieving true political and economic independence.
There we go. So I'm going to talk a lot about Africa, but hopefully what I say can be universal. It's not necessarily just about Africans, but that's kind of what I know. And what that video missed out is, what's really important is that Ghana became the first Black African country to get independence, which was very much started by Kobna Setchi's kind of movement. And what's really important, so this is Cape Coast Castle, and I come from Cape Coast, and I've walked past and been past this castle my whole life. And every few years, it develops a whole new meaning for me. The most recent one, when I did become a vegan, finally it made sense, because I went through there, and there's a room smaller than this with a low ceiling, with the tiniest window, and where they kept, 1,000 people, with no bathroom breaks or anything, just chained. And there were, the narrative is, and then the white man came and then they did this to us. And I kind of went, I'm not so sure we're that brilliant ourselves. But it made sense to me when I saw it that, no, we were just treated as animals as we treat. I'm not giving any vegan speeches now, but that part then made sense to me. That is how we treat cattle, and that's how these people treated us. But the castle is still there, and it's still magnificent, and I named my brand after it. But I'll kind of go in a circular way. But so in Ghana and along West Africa, we had the first contacts with the European sailors. So Elmina Castle, which is just as big as this one, is built in 1493. And I always think that if the Portuguese came over and built this huge castle in 1493, how many years must they have been coming over before? Because you don't just come and build a huge castle on your way somewhere else. And to put it into context, it took another 200 years from Cape Coast, where I'm from, for the Europeans to reach Cape Town.
reading that.
Now, why all this is significant to today's topic is that what families like mine were doing was protecting our traditions, and making sure that those of them who were the elites or the ruling classes or whatever would actually protect, things we wore. So very much both my mum and my grandma are career women, and way before it became fashionable, my mother was a lawyer and would go to court with her full, a head wrap and everything, and didn't adopt the European styles. And my grandmother also played it, both ways. She would wear her magnificent gowns, but she was also a tribal leader who would dance barefoot and jump over fires. So I knew all this, but I didn't give a damn until the COVID came along, and I thought, what am I going to do with myself? So this is my brand, Cape Coast. And so the D, so I come from Cape Coast, of course, and the D in Cape Coast, I say, stands for decolonization or deconstruction. I very unwisely studied fashion design when I had my kids, and I did not like all the fiddly bits. I'm not a fiddly person, so you'll see that all my designs are more structurally cut than actually, the fine things of 1/8 of an inch. So I started Cape Coast purely by accident. I'd started Vegana, which is my food brand. My staff are over there. And I'm very, very vain. I care about how I look a little bit too much. I went into the kitchen and they wanted me to put on a hairnet. And I was like, I don't think so. So I went into my car, and the first bit of fabric I had, which was some African print, I wrapped around my head, and I came back into the kitchen. So then I started buying more and more of these, and then it became its own brand, because I started then selling the extra things. So when I started, I didn't fully understand African fabric myself. So I was buying, so this is a picture from one of my first fashion shows, and beautiful, but it's gorgeous, but it imitates kente, which is there with Gorab, and it's everything that's wrong with African fabric. Yes, it's still a part of our identity, but so this is it. But actually, most of these designs were brought to us with the Portuguese sailors about 500 years ago, coming from Indonesia and other parts of South America. And a lot of the basic designs aren't African, and they were not produced in Africa at any point. And the big company Vlisco, who does print a lot of African print, they tend to buy up any local factories that start up trying to make African print. So African print in itself, sure, we should all wear it and celebrate being African, but in a sense, it's not authentically African. So here, I hope this works. I will show you fashion show. So I'm going to talk a bit about kente, which is there, as an example of an African print that's been done well and has gone global and sticks to our tradition, and then I'll talk about the bad stuff. Okay. I got it. Yeah, so this is from my fashion show. So that fashion show was when I started the journey of understanding the difference between this type of print and this type of print, and why I needed to focus on finding out more and promoting this type of print. And a lot of the time people will say to me, but it's too heavy. But actually when something is made from pure cotton, it's going to breathe. Whereas whatever goes on in the factory produced thing here might not actually let your skin breathe that quite as well. So this, what he's wearing there is actually kente. That piece I wear myself, and it's 120 years old. And the colors haven't faded at all. I have one. Oh, see if I can get it. I have one here, which, yeah. I have one here which you can pass along. So, so kente is hand woven, I don't know if you can all hear them, by looms that are this big and then joined together. And this is about 100 years old. And I'm just amazed that the fabric, it hasn't faded, but you can pass it along. So now with my brand Cape Coast, I'm very much about, so this is also kente. So it's also the same as this, just that I asked for it now to be printed in more, monochrome colors, and then design it in my own way. So my brand now is very much dedicated to reviving our own traditions, and I'm on a journey myself to learn about the West African. It's so diverse, I had no idea. On a journey myself to learn about all this, yeah. Okay. No. Right, so kente is still to this day made in the same way, and any visitor who comes to Ghana kind of gets given kente or wears kente, and I certainly wear it for any important thing. So this is kente, and so that's Idris Elba. I'm not so sure about this modern interpretation of kente, but those symbols on there each have a meaning, and it's something I'm learning as well, because I grew up believing that we didn't have a written history in Africa, but actually the Adinkra symbols on the big print all mean something. And obviously that's Bill Clinton, and that's Kwame Nkrumah, who eventually led Ghana to independence, and Muhammad Ali, or Cassius Clay as he might have been called by then. Yeah. So this is probably the most famous kente picture. I don't know if any of you recognize it. But this was, God, my brain's gone. Right in the middle of the Black Lives Matters movement, when the whole kneeling thing became a really, really big thing. And so that's Nancy Pelosi and the members of Congress draped in their kente, taking that bow. But I'm just using as an example to show how far this cloth has gone. And to this day, I think most of the black colleges in the US, when they do graduate, they wear pieces of kente. Now, even though it's very well known, a lot of people still don't understand that you should be wearing the hand-woven kente and not just the print. And I when we talk about revival, I'm very much about trying to teach people that when fabric is hand-woven, it's made to last, it's special, it's made for you, and that's the way we should be going. Yeah. So kente, I think it was earlier this year, kente got a UNESCO award as a fabric of importance. Now, on to fast fashion. I'm trying with this, I didn't want to do too much. I think we all know, I've always believed that we all know the bad stuff, what's going on in the world. We do know it, but it's a question of what to do about it. And I firmly believe that we haven't looked enough at the market for instance, like electric vehicles now. Give us choice, give us the nice things, and we will drive them and then feel better that we're doing something for the earth. So we all know fast fashion is awful. I mean, as I was doing this, I found out some even more things. I didn't have time to go into microplastics, but I found some scary things about humans' testicles versus dogs' testicles, and apparently men's testicles has something like 75% more microplastics in it than dogs. So this is Katamanta Market in Ghana. I don't know, have any of you ever heard about this place? So it's the world's largest second-hand market, where the donated clothes and all the stuff we chuck away, a lot of it ends up here. So we've called it, it's not a racist thing, but we call second-hand clothes in Ghana Obronia Wewu, which means dead white man's clothes. So we are in Ghana at the moment importing 15 million tons per week, is it per week or per month, of second-hand clothes. And I can say in the past 10 years, I have seen the damage it's doing at every level to our capital, and also killing of the local fabric manufacturers, what people wear. It's just such a bad thing that's happening with the Katamanta market. It's absolutely massive. I couldn't find a picture that gets the full range of it. But Katamanta market was in the news in January for all the wrong reasons. There you go. So there was a massive fire, which completely destroyed the whole thing. And no matter what you think about secondhand, whatever, it's so many people lost their livelihoods and everything, and that began to stir something in me. So I myself, now that I'm in Ghana, I'm trying to see what I can do in terms of doing something in this space. But they're building up again, but the imports are still coming. And I love it when I read that, they say we take 15 million tons of second-hand clothes, 40% ends up in landfill. It doesn't. We don't have landfill in Ghana, because landfill is a specific thing. What actually happens is it gets thrown in the sea. And if you consider that in West Africa, we've lost 30% of our coastline over the past 15 years, man-made and environmental reasons.
No, la polizia, no, porco Dio.
So, this is not my term, but the term that I when I was doing a little bit of research for this is waste colonialism, which is we think we're doing good, and we think we're sending you our second-hand clothes, and then it gets sent to us. But there needs to be something done with it, and it can be done in a number of ways. So I'll take you through some of them. There. So this is the boring policy thing, which does have a point in that. So we're talking a lot about circular economy and sustainability these days, but fashion is somehow left out of it. So, for instance, the statistics I know in France, 80% of all their second-hand clothes get shipped out. But all these designers have no responsibility about what happens to their clothes. But in packaging now, there are manufacturers do have to take the EPR, extended producer responsibility, and get involved in that. So there needs to be some kind of movement that says when Shein or whoever produces a T-shirt, where it ends up, those people that are going to end up with it, what are you going to, what's going to happen? I personally, yes, great, wonderful, but I haven't seen policy, international NGO work working for us in Africa. No. Ever. I don't know. So I still think it comes down to us somehow working with what we have, educating and trying to change our world through this. So in Katamanta now there's a lot of very interesting people doing upcycling work, which I would very much like to get into with Cape Coast. But on the other hand, upcycling can, how much of rubbish can you upcycle? It's not something you can mass reduce enough to make a market. So I do want to get involved in this, but I also very much want to stick in my lane of promoting the revival of fabric and clothes that we treasure. So this is kind of where I think I want to go next. And over here, I've been working for now we're using, which is this video here. I've been working with a local guy who's helping me weave with raffia, just with raffia. But I would like to then move on to crowdfunding to buy one of these machines, and you can put in as much cotton or whatever, and it produces yarn for you, and then you can produce clothes from.
I'm going to turn it like this. So I'm going to go like that.
Where?
And so I'm going to add more so that the next row will be thicker than the other one.
So we're using here macrame, which is actually more with roots in the Middle East, but for sure in Africa we have our own basket weaving and many, many, many weaving traditions. Right, so this is my brand. I've gone into Mali mud cloth, which is not this, but is this. And I think it's extremely special. And mud cloth has been made the same way, arguably from 300 to 500 years ago. What's really interesting now is let's see what happens now that there's this new spirit of leadership across Africa. I don't know, are any of you keeping up with the Ibrahim Traore? You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Honestly, just put it once if you're on Instagram or something, and you'll see. So now us Africans across the world are on the streets. Ibrahim Traore took over Burkina Faso and has driven out the French and is driving out the foreign owners of a lot of the minerals, and it's becoming a massive, massive global movement. I'm a little bit more cynical about it because I still don't see why a very rich, evil person wouldn't just go and then fund one of these revolutionaries and take over. And I'm not so sure we should be getting rid of democracy quite so quickly, but let's hope I'm wrong. But what did happen in Mali then, you couldn't get out Mali mudcloth because the whole area was overtaken with warlords and the Russian Wagner army. But mudcloth is very much made by artists. And they make it it's rarely more than this size. It's kind of like this. Now we'll turn it this way for you. Yeah. So if you're ever buying what somebody says is hand-woven African print, you need to look out for the joining. Because we mill it by hands and feet, it's unlikely that a traditional local African person has a machine big enough to be printing off one yard, so it should be joined together. And for mud cloth, usually it's dyed with mud and leaves and trees. And then all these patterns have meanings. I could make them up for you, but actually I don't know them. Yeah, so this is a look at. So this is how they make the cotton. They actually start. So for a piece like this, it would have started off as a cotton ball grown in Africa, and then absolutely ages to make it into these strips. And this is do I have here? This is, say, the Nigerian version. So it comes like this, and then you join it into strips. So occasionally when I am selling something and somebody comes to me and goes, oh, I went on holiday in Zanzibar and I bought this for $10. Why are you selling for so much? Because the $10 go away. So I'm moving on away from fabric to talk about food. So food very much was what started me on my journey to understand my Africanness and kind of brought me in gently. So I was in university and started cooking for my friends, and then I kind of joined the African Society just to cook some more. But I just never gave it any value, and I spent until quite recently, most of my time learning how to cook African food, because my mother was a career woman, and for her and my grandmother, women don't go into kitchens, they work. So I had to kind of learn this myself. But I always a little bit looked down on my own African food. So I would cook it as a last resort for those weird vegetarians because it's tasty. But if I was have a party, then I would want to make something French or something Italian or whatever. So I've been very much on a journey, and I would say it's only this half of my life that I've love and adore and understand just how important what we have, at least in West Africa, is. And I can see more and more when I meet somebody and I ask them, have you had jollof rice? They'll say yes, they've had some West African food. And in my 20 years here, I've loved the UAE, but I was able to start a vegan West African food business here and do okay with it. So there's definitely a sea change going on, and I think in London now we have the first African restaurant with a Michelin star. So food is definitely my happy place. I see it as a bit of one of those bad boyfriends. 10% of happy, 90% of hustle, but we go again. and I do genuinely, as Gaurav, I do genuinely love cooking for people and talking about food and finding out about West African food, and then hating myself the next day when there's all the washing up and all the grease and all the everything. But I plan to develop it in another way. But I'm very, very thankful for this journey that I found. And there's a few ingredients that I will talk about. And ever since I've found out about them, my strategy with Vegana is I always understood that my small vegan West African business in Dubai was never going to be the thing that's going to give me what I wanted, but it would give me the beginning of an authenticity to then begin to talk about the food that I really want to promote. And I'll just take you through a few of them now. But just a little bit about Vegana.
Oh, with that.
Yeah. So I really, and not just because I'm from Africa, I really, really think West African food is one of those foods that everybody can like, and really should be there with Mexican or Indian food that you see everywhere. And also it can generally be made healthier. And this is some of the media, this is some of the media attention that I got from doing Vegana. That PR experience did help there. So West African cuisine. So West African cuisine, we are very, very, very ethnically diverse. There's no such thing as a Ghanaian person, for instance. It's a word that was made up in 1957 for us We are 9. So in Ghana alone, we are 9 very different ethnic groups with 9 very different languages. And underneath the 9, you have the dialects. And then when you go to the Nigerians, it's, a lot more people, a lot more languages. So West Africa is very, very diverse in every way. But because of colonialism, and particularly the French troops, we all got the same ingredients and way of cooking things. So there is a little bit like maybe food of the Levant or whatever, there is some things that we have in common, but we all have our local accent. And one thing that it all has in common is how healthy it is, yeah. And delicious. So yes, the Lancet, which is, if you've heard about it, it's a really respected medical journal, had West African food as number 6 out of 175 countries in terms of healthy food. And what's really sad, and which is why I want to do what I'm doing, is year after year I see that my own people don't want to eat our own food. So so in Ghana, for instance, you can see that the people from north of Ghana definitely have some Arabic traits in their food because they're in the deserty type of region, and how they cook. How they cook a food called wache, which fascinates me. So how they cook wache came from the north across the desert, but then went with the slaves to the Caribbean, which is now what is rice and peas that you'll see that a lot of Jamaicans eat. And of course, coming from the East Africa, the Indian influences as well. So West African food, if the generic kind of versions, are something that has a huge international influence that most people will be able to cope with and also love. There. So I want to talk about. I have some for you. Can you serve us some little cups of sobolo? So it's known as bisab, or I don't know why I find the word sobolo so funny. Bisab or sobolo. Have any of you ever had it before? Yeah, you have. So it's in Ghana to this day, if you have a wedding, a big gathering, a funeral, anything that's bringing important or people who have traveled from far away, to this day you drink bisab. And I was really fascinated to find that the African Americans have a day that they celebrate called Juneteenth, where they wear red. And actually the reason that the African Americans wear red is because of the drink. But a lot of them think it's because of blood of emancipation, and not at all. It was because when the slaves went over, then whenever they had to celebrate, they would drink a version of it made with sorrel leaves. Now, what you might get is a little bit bitter, but you can add, we have sweetener that you can add to. And these are some of the amazing health benefits of hibiscus. And I think I found across, certainly at the Arab world, North Africa, all across West Africa, we certainly are all drinking a version of bisab. But I don't see that translating on any drink shelves, which it's always like, I'm not seeing versions of bisab, this, hibiscus, this drink or that drink. Many other things, but hibiscus, it grows in abundance. It's really easy to dry and drink, but why are we not all drinking it? I know for myself that it certainly, how can I say, it certainly has kept me at age 84 looking like I'm much younger, and gives me a lot of energy. Yes, and it's generally very good for me. Anybody who hangs around with me will be given this out. Yeah. So I just put together, don't worry too much about this, but I'm fascinated by it because there's a rise in non-alcoholic drinks across the world, and a lot of young people aren't drinking. But I can bet my bottom dollar that this rise is going to be in energy drinks and all the things that are bad for us, rather than just the hibiscus tea or hibiscus drink that so many cultures around the world have been drinking, and it would be so simple, to bottle it. I know that the French West Africans in France do promote it, and it's easier to buy there. But I haven't seen it, even in Ghana. I find it impossible to find unsweetened Bissau. And it's, I recommend any of you, it's really easy to make. I make my version, I soak the hibiscus leaves, and then you add the skin of the pineapple. And in the skin of the pineapple are a lot of healthy enzymes, and also we add the skin of the ginger. And you just boil it together, mash it together, sieve it. That's that. For the drinkers out there, it goes really well with vodka and gin. So this is just how you make Sobolo. And this is just what you're looking at. So the next thing that I'm really fascinated about is fonio. I have somewhere, and actually I think what made me take what I was doing a little bit more seriously was when I came across fonio. And then you find that there is such a genre as an Afro-vegan chef. Anyway, that you find that the Afro-vegan chefs around the world are all promoting fonio, even though we don't necessarily eat as much as you do. But fonio is really is a complete wonder grain that we should all be eating and fighting for. So first of all, it's really easy to cook, and you use fonio instead of rice. It presents as couscous, but couscous is processed and unhealthy, but fonio is actually like super healthy, and it also absorbs the flavors of what you're trying to cook. For a vegan like me, it's important because it's a full chain amino acid. Any food nerds out there will know what I'm talking about. And it's 11% protein per 100 g. So I tend to have it for my breakfast every day. And you can use it as a flour, as a sweet thing, as something to go alongside instead of rice. But what's really special about fonio is that it's currently growing in the poorest countries in the world, across the Sahel belt, which is from that bit of West Africa where rainforest meets the Sahara. So it grows there, but with hardly any water, doesn't need fertilizer. It has one of the shortest seed to harvest times of 6 months, I believe. Yes, it's to get, because fonio it's a millet. So sure, it's labor intensive to get the grain, but it's such a shame now when I go home, all my people are eating imported Thai rice rather than fonio. And if I achieve anything, I would love to talk to them and say, let's serve this in prisons and hospitals and schools, and why are we eating imported Asian rice instead of what grows in our backyard, is so healthy and is also tasty. I mean, it's a crazy world. Now, so I just put together, so that's not all about Africa. These are some of the other millets. I personally haven't necessarily gone down the journey of finding out about them, but I think we all know that we should probably be eating all of some of these millets, but yeah. So the other thing I'll talk you through quickly, is egusi. And egusi, because you find Nigerians and Ghanaians everywhere, it's made from, it comes from the inside of a melon seed. And you use it as you can use it to cook it on its own, or you use it as a food thickener. And egusi, what's really important, it's 28% protein per 100 g. So this is, you're talking about the same as milk. It makes a good scrambled egg, completely unprocessed. So this is egusi in the seed. And you can find it everywhere. I can even find it just opposite my kitchen in Dubai Mall, because it's what us Ghanaian and Nigerians eat all the time. And instead, we're having protein shakes and other weird and wonderful stuff to up our protein when you could just have egusi. That's my last. So I will end now with this video. So one of the things I did, and one of my philosophy, as I became an entrepreneur, one philosophy that really works for me is I call it win-win-win. So if I'm doing something that I'm enjoying, that is also making the world a better place, this is also somehow making me some money, I find that's the lane I want to stay in. And it actually is possible. So I came up with Sold Sundays as a way of bringing various people together. I wasn't particularly interested in pushing my brands at those events, but of course we were present. And this is just a promo video for one of the events last year. So I'll end with that. And then you can ask me questions if you want. Right, so that's me. I could go on.
Thank you so much. Good. I'm gonna kick it off. I do have a question for you.
Yes.
1 second. Right, so you talked about Fonio, right? How would you feel if, let's say, McDonald's adopts it and makes it part of their, supply chain? Or do you believe that Fonio needs to be preserved with an Africanness of sorts?
So no, I don't believe that I'll answer the second part. Whilst I don't believe it needs to be preserved for an Africanness, because it comes from these particularly poor countries. I mean, you're talking that this could be their wonder thing. So I don't believe in. I have issues with cultural appropriation, but I don't believe in keeping anything for Africanness. Now, I think for any of us that are in the sustainable field, greenwashing is really difficult. So I wouldn't have a straight answer for that, because if McDonald's came and took Fonio and made it into their buns, well, great, go Fonio. But on the other hand, the damage that I know that kind of fast food company does, so that's a tough one. But at the moment, because I've been obsessed by Fonio for 6 years, and I've always believed it's on the cusp. So maybe, we need a McDonald's. Any contacts?
No. Anyone else?
I was just wondering, so for low and middle class income people, when it comes to fast fashion, planned obsolescence, these kind of things, it's usually it's like that class requires fast fashion, stuff like that, to usually buy clothes, including fast food and stuff like that. Is there a way you feel we can make a cultural shift or a mindset shift where even foods and fast fashion itself also can gain traction and become more accessible from the ground up?
So I'm not so sure that I'm buying this thing across the world. I'm not so sure that first of all, you have to start somewhere. So I'm not so sure that like when we say poorer people, I've had people who've come from Ghana to work with me, for instance, and I remember saying, fold those clothes. And the poor lady didn't know what I was talking about because she'd never owned more than 2 items of clothes. So she'd never actually had to fold things in a pile. Now, I'm not so sure that when we talk about the dangers from fast fashion, we are talking about people like that, who might buy 1 or 2 T-shirts and treasure it and keep it forever. I think the danger is more in, I don't have the statistic in my head, but the people who are buying things just to try them on, wear them once or twice, it's not winter season, it's summer season, and get rid of. I think that's the real problem. I don't know the statistics, but I would be very surprised if that level of person who can only afford 1 T-shirt a year is the problem.
Yeah, actually, I was also thinking of maybe also as well because of the longevity you talked about, also about the clothing as well. So usually when you buy fast fashion, the quality itself is also low. So usually tears, a small tear, immediately you change it, you know.
But that's, yeah, then you're not talking about the really poor people, because that's the revival. We immediately tell you need to sew it or make it into something. I mean, but this idea that, for instance, I come from Ghana and the people there are very poor, but they will all save to buy kente for their sister or daughter's wedding, which will be kept and will be passed down. And that's the kind of thinking that I'm interested in bringing back.
But is there a way again to bring this longevity into the mass?
It's changing. So there's something I noticed study that, especially the younger generation, more much savvier, like older to millennials, I'd say, they're rejecting consumerism because they're overstimulated almost, because everything on TikTok, Instagram, everyone's selling, and they have all this stuff, they're spending all their money, and it's all stuff they don't need. So there's really, kind of like an awakening happening where we don't need this much stuff. It's like, I'm gonna go 1 year without buying everything, or beyond the bare essentials. I think that's the trend, I'm not sure. So that's, hopefully that shift is happening, because technically the people who are consuming this fast fashion, we don't need all this stuff, Minimalism. We don't need that. And minimalism is rising, and kind of like good quality, things that have longevity, that's kind of like resurfacing. So hopefully it makes its way to the masses. Of course, it's still very niche now.
But my experience of poor people would be in Europe and in Africa. And in both places, I see still the bad mentality, and I'm talking poor people here, of let's buy a lot of cheap stuff and keep changing. So I'm not sure. And again, with food, we're none of us are growing things. All of us are just chucking food away. I mean, it's how can I say? I'm not sure that the people that are making the damage are really that poor.
You had a strategy in having like a certain items that you focus on, not everything, or it was just broad? I want to revive the whole tradition, broad and light soup.
So for me, it's been a journey. First time to come here and we had Sakara. And actually, everyone was a big lady. So I'm going to change in those terms of the fabric, the structure, the lampshades, the house. So I didn't necessarily have an aha moment, but I felt that I was always pretty to belong with them, and that's our learning and take. And I just spoke of the fabric of connecting things and designing for islands and best. Basically, this we turn it upside down. We wait as a good technique.
Okay. Well, when it's verified in the thing to be read, as we speak about color, instead of
So it's always I went to mind about certain artworks, but I'm really still learning in the South. And just my next thing I like to learn about is astounding, which I was like I said.
I got there and I realized that there's so much. I mean, from the Japanese to Burut, how you pronounce, So I'm on the journey, but I don't have all the answers, yeah.
Thank you. I'm done.
Yes. If you haven't had a cookie, please have one and take one with you. So the cookie is made with tahini and oats and dark chocolates. Yeah.
You're going for the cookie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya.